Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Ewald. I serve the Texas Tribune as Senior Director of Events and Live Journalism. I want to offer a welcome to those joining us in person here in Austin and those joining us online throughout the state this morning for our day-long symposium exploring the top priorities for the 2025 legislative session. Today we'll hear from newly elected officials, old guard incumbents, educators, policy experts, and Capitol insiders on what's ahead for the 2025 session and what it will mean for Texans. So our program will run throughout the day until approximately 3:30 p.m. with 5 one-hour panels, each of which will include 15 minutes for your questions. So here in Austin, we have a mic stand right back there, and our virtual audience, and we'll remind you throughout the day, our virtual audience can also submit questions online at our Q&A portal, texastribune.org/ask. That's texastribune.org/ask, and provide a first name and where you're reaching us from, because it's always nice to see where Texans are joining us from around the state. And one more quick note for our virtual viewers. So if you're joining us live, note that we will be taking some breaks during the day. We'll announce those breaks, including 30 minutes for lunch. But just note that our agenda for the day on the page that you're watching from, and come back to the same page to view other panels. We will also have each panel available to view in full, along with a recap of the day's conversations, all on the Tribune's website. We are also grateful for the support of our sponsors for today's program. Our major sponsors are Beer Alliance of Texas, Texas Rural Funders, Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, Water Grows, Beyond Petrochemicals, Texas Managed Care Alliance, Raise Your Hand Texas, Methodist Healthcare Ministries, HCA Healthcare, Texas State Technical College, and St. David's Healthcare. And our supporting sponsors today include Texas Cattle Feeders Association, Extended Campus at the University of Texas at Austin, and Flavor Hospitality Group. Though corporate sponsors and donors underwrite this event, they play no role in determining the content, speakers, or line of questioning. We also want to offer a huge thanks to our host, the Thompson's Conference Center at the University of Texas at Austin and the university. Here to offer a welcome on behalf of the university is Dr. Art Markman, Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the University of Texas at Austin, it is a great pleasure to welcome all of you here today to our campus. For everyone watching online, thanks for taking the time to join us as well. A special welcome to all of our distinguished guests today. We have a number of folks from the Texas Tribune here. What a tremendous resource for the state of Texas. We're really lucky to have them looking out for us, and we appreciate their partnership in this event. We also have several members of the legislature who will be joining us throughout the day. Remember, this is a really busy time for everyone in the ledge. Please make sure to extend your gratitude for them taking the time to speak to us about the upcoming session. We really are grateful to the Texas Tribune for giving the university the opportunity to host the preview of the 2025 Texas legislative session. You know, at its heart, a university is more than just a place of learning. It's a civic space, particularly a public university, where ideas converge, where perspectives get shared among a variety of different stakeholders, and ultimately solutions to difficult problems come about. Our mission is not just to educate, it's to serve as a bridge across the variety of divides that we have, connecting people from different areas of the state, from different walks of life, fostering and teaching how to engage in productive dialogue. Today's event exemplifies that mission. We're bringing together lawmakers, journalists, educators, members of the Texas community to engage in these kinds of important conversations about legislative priorities, about the future of the state of Texas. So as we prepare for the 2025 legislative session, the panels will offer an opportunity to reflect on key policy issues with a lens of collaboration, with a lens of mutual respect. We're proud to provide this kind of platform for open, inclusive dialogue because we believe that only through this kind of engagement can we address the complexities of the time that we're living in and really support the foundations of our democracy. So as we embark on today's discussions, please lean into the spirit of inquiry, the spirit of exchange. Whether you're here as a panelist, a participant, an observer, your voice matters, and your insights will help to inform the road ahead. So I want to thank all of you for being here, for your commitment to civic engagement, for the trust that you've placed in the University of Texas, and as a place where these kinds of conversations can take root, can flourish. So let's make this day productive, but also inspiring, because together we are here to build a stronger and more connected state of Texas. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Markman. We also want to thank all those around the state here in person who help make the journalism of the Tribune possible, including events like this, by becoming Texas Tribune members. To learn more, become a member, visit texastribune.org/support. You can also chat with my colleague, Emily, out in the lobby, our membership manager. As we look toward the start of the 2025 legislative session, I also remind you to check the Texas Tribune events page for upcoming events, including conversations at our Studio 919 downtown, just 10 minutes away, and events we're holding around the state. You can learn more at texastribune.org/events. So before we begin today's program, I'd like to welcome to the stage CEO of the Texas Tribune, Sonal Shah, to offer a welcome.
Well, welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here, and thank you for coming out on a rainy day. You always look at the rain and you're like, you're not sure if everyone's going to show up because you don't want to weather the rain out there. But thank you all for coming, and thank you for coming to this important session and this important day. I really want to first thank my colleague, Matthew Watkins, who actually did all of the work in setting up the session and making sure we can have this conversation. And he got very sick this morning, so will not be able to be here. So I am the poor substitute that is opening for him, but he has done extraordinary work in making sure this session is so important. And every session for us is important because this is about Texas. What is Texas? What happens, what's going to happen in this legislative session, what it means for our state, what it means for our communities. It's important for us to know and to hear from the experts that you all will be hearing from. But for us, for the Texas Tribune, we want to make sure that we keep an informed Texas, that you all know everything that's happening in the state. We can give you the information for you to make your decisions. And that is exactly why we're here. It's why we find our role is important, to be the navigators to help you understand what's happening in the state. And so thank you for being supporters. Thank you for coming to this event. And thank you for being a part of the Texas Tribune team. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you so much, Sonal. As our first panel takes the stage, I'm going to do some introductions. Sonal mentioned that Matthew Watkins isn't able to join us today. He was going to be moderating this morning's panel. James Barragán is going to fill in, do a great job for us. James is a politics reporter for the Texas Tribune with a focus on accountability reporting. Prior to joining the Tribune, James worked as a State House reporter for the Dallas Morning News and had previous stints at the Austin American-Statesman and the Los Angeles Times. Blaise Gainey covers state politics for the Texas Newsroom. He previously worked at Nashville Public Radio, where he reported on state politics, elections, and breaking news. Tribune politics reporter Jasper Scherer previously covered Texas politics and government for Hearst Newspaper's Austin Bureau, which he joined after stints covering City Hall for the Houston Chronicle and Bexar County for the San Antonio Express News. And Bayless Wagner is a reporter on the Austin American-Statesman's state politics desk, covering the Texas legislature and state and federal courts. Her work focuses on political, social, and cultural divides, including those related to abortion, LGBTQ+ policy, and data. We welcome all of you here today, welcome our panel, and with that, I turn the program over to James.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you for not saying that I'm the even poorer substitute for Matthew Watkins. Thank you to all of you for attending and to the University of Texas for hosting us. And we've got a lot to cover, so we're going to just jump right in with these great political reporters. The first thing that we're going to chat about is the speaker's race. It's on a lot of people's mind for people who watch the legislature. Dade Phelan has, of course, been the speaker for 2 sessions, but there's some dissatisfaction with him among some in the Republican caucus. And I want to talk about what that dissatisfaction means. There's obviously now a second person who's come up as the consensus candidate to replace him. That's David Cook of Mansfield. And a couple of pretty crucial days coming up. And so, Jasper, I guess I want to start with you, and if you can sort of lay the land of like why this matters, what the speaker does, and if there is a change in speaker, what that could mean for the political landscape of the legislative session.
Okay, simple. Yeah, I think so. As you alluded to, just I think pretty critical. A couple days is a good way to describe it. The kind of the big event that we've all been waiting for in suspense, essentially since the November 5th election, is the House Republican caucus is going to meet to essentially arrive at their, unless they deadlock and come out of their meeting with without a choice, they're going to nominate their, basically when the House holds their official vote, they're going to pick their nominee who they support as a caucus. And so Dade Phelan, David Cook are going to be both vying to get 60% of the caucus vote, and that this is not like a legally binding mechanism, but essentially David Cook is hoping that if he gets 53 Republicans supporting him out of the 88 in the caucus, then everyone will be bound to support him on the floor, and then that theoretically would put him over the edge. He only needs 76 votes. So I think, and it's a critical election because I think maybe less so in terms of ideology. I think we're all familiar with the legislature has gone pretty, there's not a whole lot of room left, I think, in a lot of respects for the legislature. So I think, David Cook, and this is sort of borne out in how David Cook's voting record is not, he's not a firebrand from the far right side of the caucus. So I think it's less about sort of the ideology. The House is going to be, presumably pretty conservative no matter who is speaker. It's more about sort of the style and power sharing with Democrats, and sort of the tradition of decorum, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. But I think it's that, I guess that's kind of the lay of the land of just why this all matters.
Yeah, and if you in the audience are sort of thinking about this and doing a sort of beautiful mind calculation of like 53 members and then 76 members, it's all very complicated, and there's multiple votes, and some of these rules, like the caucus rules, are essentially made up. They are not legally binding. They're just the rules of the club, right? The House rules are the ones that are actually binding, but because of the party purity that has become increasingly growing in the last decade from the Republican Party, there is pressure among the members to sort of stick with the endorsed candidate. But one thing that you said that I wanted to pick up on is you said there's not that much more room to the right for the legislature to keep going. And I think representatives like Briscoe Cain and Tony Tinderholt would say, hold my beer. Because I think they do want to keep they want to keep going to the right, and that's a big part of this. You mentioned the Democratic Party chairs. Blaze, I just want to talk to you about sort of why is there this dissatisfaction? Jasper mentioned the Democratic chairs, but there's also these complaints that because of this partnership with the Democrats, conservative legislation is getting held up, even though we've seen probably the 2 most conservative sessions in recent history, and some would argue in Texas history, over the last 2 sessions. But what are these, what they like to call themselves, the reformers, the anti-Phelan group, what are they looking for, and what can we expect if that faction of the GOP caucus does win?
Yeah, I think they are looking for dominance from the GOP. I think they want to basically be able to set the rules and I think one of the demands that they have on the contract that they have is that they want to make sure that any Republican priorities are passed first and get a floor vote first before any Democrat priorities. I think this could mirror. I just left Tennessee reporting, and I think it could mirror some of what goes on there, where Democrats' voices in the legislature are pretty much silenced, and it could create a place where if it's not a Republican bill, it won't even get a hearing on the floor. Now, this obviously is more extreme than I think we may see, but it seems like it's leaning towards that way. And so when you say like it can't get further to the right, I think it could actually get some of the rules in the way that they're carried out could start to be more restricting on the Democrat Party.
And Bayless, we were talking about this before in the green room, but the relationship with the Senate as well, that the House has with the Senate. The Senate has been traditionally more, not traditionally, but at least since Lieutenant Governor Patrick has been there, much more socially conservative, much more connected with the grassroots, passing a lot of that legislation that the grassroots have been pushing, and that has, in the last decade, been sort of stopped or died in the House for whatever reason. The Senate does have sort of, it has already gotten ahead on the no Democratic chairs. Lieutenant Governor Patrick said that once Houston Senator John Whitmire left, there would be no more chairs. He is gone now, so we expect there to be no more chairs there. But can you talk a little bit about what that relationship might be like between the House and the Senate if this new faction in the GOP succeeds, and then also if it doesn't, if Phelan does stay in the speaker's seat?
Yeah, so that's going to be kind of the main question. How independent will the House be? This election cycle was punishing for House members that, for example, voted to impeach Attorney General Ken Paxton. The Senate was the body that voted to acquit him, and a lot of the representatives that voted to impeach him were primaried, and several of them lost. And so there may be less of an incentive for House representatives to sort of go their own way with legislation. Yes, and the other thing is Speaker Phelan was sort of a bit of a bulwark. He would protect his members who wanted to, have their own voice. And Lieutenant Governor Patrick is much more interested in, as James said, the grassroots, more conservative, even more further right legislation. So it's going to be a question of, are they going to be in lockstep with the Senate? No, but are they going to move more toward collaboration? Potentially, and it depends on the speaker candidate that wins.
I do want to talk about also, we are talking about Phelan and Cook as the two main candidates. Jasper, you and I have reported on this, but there's also these rumblings about a possibility of a third candidate because Representative Cook was able to get 48 members on a list, but 48 is not the 60% threshold of these sort of caucus rules. And so he is not a clear shot to win the endorsement battle on Saturday, which is a crucial date. Speaker Phelan has said he's got the votes, but of course the critics of Speaker Phelan say, sure, you got the votes, but are those votes mostly Democrats? Because we don't like that. And that was originally Joe Straus's problem and why he had such a hard time with the right wing of his party. And so both of them are projecting confidence. Both of them are saying, we're going to take it on Saturday. But then we know, and there are rumblings, that there are also members calling about, hey, what if we split off and had a third candidate? Can you talk a little bit about that? What's the strategy there, and what does that look like?
Sure. I think, just looking at the two leading candidates are, one of them, the main challenger, has released a list, as you mentioned, that doesn't amount to what he needs to get to majority support in the caucus or majority support on the floor. And then the incumbent speaker is saying he's got the votes, but he hasn't publicly list his list of supporters. So I think anytime you have a situation like that, these speaker races are just, anytime you kind of have a power vacuum where there isn't a established, incumbent speaker who, there's no doubt that they're going to be able to assemble the votes come January. We shouldn't be surprised that folks are going to be maneuvering kind of in the in the background in the smoke-filled rooms to try to try to assemble coalitions. It's kind of a rare opportunity.
Because the traditional way to put out a pledge list is to put out a pledge list that gets you over the threshold. That's what Bonin did.
Right.
That's what Phelan did, and sort of it's game over at that point. But it's not been game over. So
Right.
talk us through the third candidate.
Yeah, and I think so. The thought process and sort of what we've been hearing. There's been some reporting from other news organizations as well. There's sort of this small but significant group of lawmakers, maybe led by one or two folks, sort of mobilizing this effort to just kind of keeping it on the down low. It's a sensitive situation, but just trying to feel out members who in both camps, in the pro Phelan and the pro Cook camp, just like, hey, if things fall apart in the caucus meeting, there's a stalemate, and neither of the current frontrunners are able to get what they need. Would you be open to supporting someone who's kind of palatable to both camps? And I think it's a small universe of members who could even be considered for something like that, because there's just the Paxton impeachment vote, the voucher vote. There are all sorts of I guess non-starter positions that members have taken that immediately put them out of the running. So I think that's just what makes this so hard, and why we have so much uncertainty right now is a lot of people have strong opinions about in the Republican caucus right now about who should be or what makes someone fit to lead the Texas House, and it's going to be tough to get to 60% for anyone, I think.
But the idea is basically to peel off support from both Cook and Phelan to form their
That's
own
right.
little faction.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I want to talk about the makeup of the new legislature. Obviously, a lot of change in the House. Bayless, you were talking about Speaker Phelan and his sort of way of doing things, which is to let the members vote their districts. A lot of members voted their districts, particularly on the school voucher, school choice, ESA, whatever you want to call it, conversation. And they are now sitting at home, going to stay at home because they're not coming back to the Capitol. So given that, I mean, what do you see as the political outlook for the new makeup of the legislature, particularly in the House, because that's where most of the change has been?
Yeah, I think there's a question for the representatives who voted against school vouchers and survived. Are they going to dig in, or are they going to say this isn't worth it? That's one question. Survive primary challenges, I mean. I think another one is whether the sort of further right wing of the party, which grew a few members in the most recent election, whether they will continue to be, not have a lot of power, not have a huge amount of sway, or whether people might start listening to them a little bit more. And I think also it will bring up the question of religion in public life will be even more on the table this session, as the new representatives have been generally very open about their religious views, and potentially more sympathetic to, for example, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick's vow that he will put the 10 Commandments in classrooms. And I think we'll have to see whether also the voucher bill that does come out, does get negotiated, how much room for change is going to be in their negotiation compromise, and how much we won't see in that bill.
That kind of gets, I think, to what I was saying earlier about just how it's sort of a stylistic thing, and of course, absolutely, there is plenty of room to go farther to the right. I maybe overstated that a little, but generally, the point being that these incoming freshmen, a lot of them are coming off these bruising primary races where they they're riding high. They just I guess earlier this year ousted a lot of them, Phelan allies. They challenged Phelan's, some of his chairman from the right and ousted them from the legislature. So I think it's and they're coming in wanting to essentially, I mean, it's removing the Democratic chairs, but I think also just it kind of gets to the House has traditionally had this sense of whether real or not, or more of a facade, just kind of decorum and talk politely to each other, and it's sort of been an isolated caucus. The folks like Tony Tinderholt, Briscoe, Kane, not as much him lately. He's been more with Phelan, but just I think anyone who watches the legislature is familiar with the kind of the rabble-rouser caucus getting up and raising some sort of objection to Phelan, and he just swats them away because they just don't have the numbers to make an impact. So I think it's going to be a more kind of antagonistic House, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting, which is that there's been more decorum, which is funny because I think the Senate, but this is before all of our times, but the Senate used to be that way, and it was a big place of debate and decorum, and I think they still have debate and decorum, but it's much more controlled by a very strong lieutenant governor in Dan Patrick. And there's always been lieutenant governors who have a strong hand, but I think by far, and we've written stories about this at the Texas Tribune, Lieutenant Governor Patrick really runs the Senate with an iron fist, and has sort of bent the chamber to his will, including by changing rules. And so I think that's sort of what you're hinting at with the House and potential rule changes or potential just changes of how things are run with the Democratic chairs.
Right, and what Blaise mentioned earlier about making sure that Republican priority bills all receive floor votes before any Democratic bills, and a laundry list of other related changes that they want to see. So yeah,
I'm going to keep picking on Jasper because he's my friend and I can do that. You said again, or you were talking about how there's not a whole lot of room to go to the right. One of my favorite things is a bio that I've seen from a political operative, which says that he's to the right of Reagan, to the left of God. So there's that's where the window is, and I kind of want to talk about that with Blaise because there is a desire for increased power from the GOP. Lieutenant Governor Patrick talks about this all the time, and he says, why should we have Democratic chairs when we are in the majority? We are in a supermajority in the Senate. And he says we should listen to the will of the people. So that's where he's taken that chamber. In the House, the Democrats have still had some role and some play. And so what does this do for Democrats as the minority party that's been out in the wild since 2003, and they've had small wins, or at least have been able to triage some legislation that they didn't like. But what could a potential change in speaker and the new makeup of the legislature, what does it do for them in terms of trying to get their legislation through there?
I mean, I think we heard that basically their legislation will be considered last. And there's legislation that's important to Republicans that doesn't get passed. So if that's the case, if I have to wait for that legislation to get a floor vote in order to get my bill heard, it may never get heard. Also, when you stand up to debate certain bills, depending on how the rule changes, if it's more of a speaker that rules with the iron fist, it may, your comments may not really matter as much. Whereas you were saying in the past, they've been able to, stop some bills or kill bills. It seems like that would be a lot harder in a situation where they don't have the chairs and they just don't have, the numbers on rules. And it'd be a lot harder for them to try and slow down the process of bills that they don't like from getting to the floor for a vote. And I mean, I think for Democrats, the best outcome would be for the current speaker to remain in that spot, even though he has sort of drawn back, I think 13 in 2021, now 8 Democratic chairs. It's still some, whereas the people in Cook's camp and that are against Phelan are basically saying you're not going to have any at all. And so to me, it's kind of it's a very easy choice for who they should pick.
For Democrats.
Yes.
Right.
Well, another part of the, you were asking about just ways that this might be borne out for Democrats, the kind of the loss of power. Another rule that, I guess, or another change that the anti-Phelan crowd is pushing for is and this sounds kind of like inside baseball, but it was a big theme last session, is just restricting the ability to kind of use these technical, these procedural maneuvers, points of order to, basically sink these bills, towards the end of session. The biggest bill I think that happened on was the Republican priority border security bill that would have created like a unit of deputized citizens to patrol the border. That got taken down kind of, in the 11th hour by Democrats last session. And it led to a bill that, still made national waves and went, quite far, but it didn't, for the anti-felon crowd, they want to go as far as they can. So I think that's a big, that was a big theme last session. We saw Democrats step in to use those technicalities to kill a lot of bills that otherwise would have passed.
And the anti-feeling group calls those ticky-tacky points of order. If you follow procedural rules, you may debate that, whether they're ticky-tacky or whether that's how the rules work. But one point that I want to make is that's sort of how the Senate works right now. The Senate, you rarely see a point of order called in the Senate, and I think there is an interest to see the House run more like the Senate. But Blaze mentioned a couple of things that I want to follow up on. One is that it's very clear that for the Democrats, the best thing for them is to vote for Dade Phelan, because he has continued to let them chair committees. And then two, you were talking about Democrats chairing committees and being able to potentially stop legislation that they dislike. That is, again, one of the arguments that the anti-Phelan group is saying. They're killing our bills. And one of those bills that has previously been stopped by either Democrats or more moderate Republicans is school vouchers, school choice legislation. So I want to talk a little bit about that. A lot of the members who voted, Republican members who voted against school vouchers, are gone now. They will not be back. Their replacements have pledged to vote for a school choice program like what the governor has proposed. I'm going to go to Bayless first and see and talk about what the likelihood is of a school choice program happening this session, and how quickly that might get out of the gates.
Yeah, so Governor Abbott, who funded an enormous amount of primary challenges against Republicans who voted against his school voucher bill last session, as well as some Democrats who opposed it, has said he has the votes. So he is expressing a lot of confidence that this, a school voucher program, which would allow for taxpayer money to be used toward private school tuition, he thinks that'll go through, but the question will still be, what parameters will this bill have? How much of the funding will go toward teacher pay? The last bill that was proposed had a pretty significant teacher pay raise component to it, and how much will go, how much will the vouchers be for? What kinds of schools could they be for? And I think, and also, what income level for the families. I think generally it would probably not be a lot of restrictions. It could be used by anyone, but we don't know yet. So that's the kind of thing that'll be debated, and I don't think it'll be right off the bat. I think it'll be a lot of behind the scenes talk before we see a bill filed.
Well, I think the other big point of contention that last year that will have to be ironed out again this time around is basically testing requirements, whether private schools that participate in the voucher program are held to the same standards. And I believe the Senate was against including that, and the House put that into their bill kind of at the end to sort of throw a bone to the moderate Republicans. So I think, and on the eligibility standpoint too, just Governor Abbott has been pretty adamant that it's got to be universal eligibility, that any public school or any student in Texas should be eligible. But at the end of the day, it's the money will still run out, depending on how much they approve. So, the other kind of devil in the details is how they decide who gets prioritized, kind of what Bayless was saying. And I feel like those might be two of the biggest things that could, it's a slim voucher majority right now, so there's not a whole lot of room for defection from Abbott's standpoint.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, I know you talked about the fact that like teacher pay was tied to it before, and I think with Governor Abbott being very outspoken about the fact that he believes he has the votes, I think it'd sort of be like, I have a child, and my child, when he's watching his iPad with a friend, he wants to watch that show, and I'll say, y'all need to compromise. But that's a reason to compromise. I don't think there's much reason here to compromise anymore and give them sort of the accountability that, moderate Republicans maybe wanted, or Democrats wanted, or, these things that were in the bill to sweeten the deal. Who am I sweetening it for now?
Yeah. One thing that you all have mentioned is sort of the details of what the specific legislation will look like. And I think one thing to talk about is a lot of these members who are new, Republican members specifically, have come in saying, I will vote for voucher school choice legislation. It's very easy to say that on the campaign trail. It's very easy when you've got a bunch of grassroots activists saying that to you and saying that they'll carry you over the finish line. It's very different when you come into the Capitol and then there's school districts, there's teachers, there's other parents who are saying these things actually may potentially hurt my child, my school district, and the overall economy in our district. So given that, and that's what some of the particularly the rural members who school districts are huge employers out in their districts have said, how much pressure is there on these members who have already pledged to vote for school choice to follow through and do that? In other words, like, is there any wiggle room there for them? It doesn't seem like it, because Blaze was saying that the governor has, he's confident. I think that's an understatement. I mean, he called a school choice press conference. I think he scheduled it the day before the election for the day after the election, and I'm like, he's calling a shot. He knows he's got the numbers. But so how much pressure is there on these members?
Well, you were rightfully mentioning kind of the pressure coming from the school districts back home and sort of the anti-voucher advocates. But I think, one of the most powerful, counter forces you could imagine right now is the threat of, Governor Abbott and sort of this army of pro-school voucher organizations coming in and, going scorched earth against you in your primary in 2 years if you go back on your pledge. So I think that's going to be fresh on
massive amounts of money.
Yeah, just they have no chance of these individual candidates have little chance of competing with it's out some of the out of state donors who have been pushing for this around the country. I mean, it's kind of unheard of sums in these fairly down ballot races. So I think it's just thinking about the pressure that's kind of the vibe around the House right now is like, Abbott showed his muscle, and nobody's really chomping at the bit to be on the wrong side of that in 2 years.
Let's talk about some social issues, because there's going to be probably a lot of them. Some that come to mind are abortion, transgender rights. We were talking about the infusion of religion more and more into public life, into publicly funded life like schools. So I want to talk about abortion first. I'll go to Bayless because she's reported on this a little bit, but there's been a lot of talk since the Dobbs decision about whether there needs to be changes to Texas's abortion laws and whether there needs to be exceptions to those laws banning abortion in nearly every case here in the state of Texas. That obviously hasn't happened. There's been resistance, but there's been more and more reporting as time has gone on about people who have died because they have had complications with their pregnancies. So, Bayless, I just want to chat with you a little bit about what the likelihood is of any changes to abortion laws. It seems like not likely, but you were saying that there might be some conversation about that.
Yeah, so this has been a really interesting year when it comes to that topic. I think it's important to note that last session there were bills filed to expand the exception. Texas, as Representative Colin Allred's campaign against Ted Cruz, and a number of, Kamala Harris's campaign really focused on what the Texas law is, and I think made a lot more people understand what it is, which is that there is an exception for the life of the mother. A life-threatening condition must be present for a woman to qualify for a legal abortion in Texas, and this begins at fertilization. So people are more aware of that. Polls show that Texans are not generally, most Texans do not feel that that is what they would choose as a law. But most Texans also showed in the last election that this was not a hugely motivating issue. They did not vote for Democrats in droves. Still, more than 40% voted for Democrats, but it wasn't an issue that flipped the House or, had an enormous impact as some abortion rights advocates hoped. So bills were filed last session that would have added exceptions for, more other health conditions, rape and incest, which there is no exception for. And they didn't even get hearings. Only one passed, and only basically because it was sort of not really publicized, which was it added an affirmative defense for when women have ectopic pregnancies or premature water breaks. But that's not the same as an exception. It didn't change the underlying law. It just says if you're sued or prosecuted over an abortion that you provided as a physician, you have a defense. Oh, I did it because of this. This session, yes, after an enormous amount, there were lawsuits against the law that also failed, but an enormous amount of talk about this and some more, I think, pushback against Republicans on this issue. They've heard from people in their districts. Republicans in other states have shown that even when they vote for Republicans at the top of the ticket, they may support abortion rights. And that was, in 7 states, I think, those abortion referendums passed. Anyway, Democrats have filed bills that would create more exceptions. Those are unlikely, very unlikely to get hearings. But there are some efforts from lobbyists and some talk about a potential, it's not a zero. I wouldn't say it's zero, but it's low. It's a low chance that the underlying ban will change.
Yeah, the challenge I see there is that, as you said, it's the Democrats filing the bills, right? It's not Republicans filing the bills. They haven't come out and said, we want to consider exceptions, at least not vocally. And we've also not seen the big three, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Governor Abbott, and Speaker Phelan say anything about exceptions. And so that's why I think there is a challenge for anyone who's interested in that type of legislation. But you were talking about op-ed that Senator Brian Hughes, who's the author of one of these laws, put out in the Houston Chronicle after some of this reporting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for those unfamiliar, ProPublica put out 3 stories about women who died after having miscarriages where there was an intervention to facilitate the passage of the miscarriage, because in some cases it seems that the doctors felt that they couldn't do that legally, or perhaps the incentive just wasn't there when the penalty for a physician who performs an abortion is up to 99 years in prison, loss of license, fines of no less than $100,000. Senator Brian Hughes, who is the author of the Heartbeat Act, which was before the pre-Dobbs abortion ban, wrote an op-ed responding to that reporting saying, this is basically left-wing misinformation. These doctors absolutely could have performed these abortions. These women obviously had life-threatening conditions. This was also to respond to 100 OBGYNs after this reporting came out saying the law is not clear enough. It forces us to wait to intervene until a woman is in dire distress. Anyway, he said the law can, these doctors could and basically should have intervened. And so he sort of came out in support of his law. But he also said more has to be done to make sure that doctors know the law, which is sort of an interesting thing for him to say. It's what they've been saying actually for 2 years now. And we'll have to
They
see.
being the Republicans or the doctors?
Yes, Republicans, yes. And abortion, anti-abortion groups have been saying that. Doctors don't understand it. They've admitted that. So that's
and doctors,
pretty interesting.
I think there's been surveys that doctors don't understand, and they are in fear of if they take these life-saving actions, they could be sued. There are high numbers of people who are of doctors who are highly educated people who don't understand. I think there is the exception for ectopic pregnancies, but that also has been misunderstood by some doctors, and I think there's been complications with that. But the other thing, I just want to have a caveat there of if Senator Hughes is saying there's more that needs to be done for them to understand it, that doesn't necessarily translate to we're going to make changes. And I think there's also always that consideration around election time after big issues like this, which is the reported death of three people who had complications with their pregnancies, where people want to get out in front of it and say, hey, people need to better understand. But that is not translating to me to a change of law. And we've had other lawmakers. I think Senator Joan Huffman of Houston had also kind of discussed this in 21, and then nothing came of it. So until there, I think, is more actual volume behind any of these comments, I would be skeptical of that. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah, be skeptical. Until we see a bill filed by a Republican, it's not happening.
The tone of the Hughes op-ed sounds like he was signaling there's really no appetite to
Yes.
do this. Maybe he just sort of threw that on there at the end, but I think that's a correct read on it.
Let's talk about transgender rights, because that's been an issue that has gained more and more steam. It was one of the issues you mentioned, the senatorial race between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. It was one of the main attacks that Senator Cruz used against Colin Allred, and it absolutely buried him. Senator Cruz talked about how it was his favorite ad to run against him. It played really well for voters. And so I just want to talk about a little bit of the sort of journey we've been on over here in the last 10 years here in Texas, where the bathroom bill failed in 2017. But then in the last two sessions, we have had movement on legislation that limits transgender rights, their ability to get health care, their ability to play in K through 12 sports. And I assume one of you might want to chime in that we will have legislation further restricting that. And sort of if there's any legislation that you guys have already seen that is going along those lines, and what has changed in that conversation that we went from 2017 where people said, no, we're not going to do this, to now there is an increasing amount of movement on this type of legislation?
Yeah, I'll be open. I wasn't here in 2017, so I don't know exactly what has changed, but my guess is more conservative legislature. They believe maybe they now have the numbers to pass a bathroom bill. So one has been filed. It relates to people using the bathroom that was assigned at birth, or the sex they were assigned at birth. They can use that bathroom on government property. Still, private businesses can sort of do what they want to do, but this is sort of the way that it goes. They start doing it on the government side first, and then chipping away until they can get it to the private sector. And then as far as some other legislation, I think it hasn't been filed, but I do think there'll be something about changing the birth certificate. I know we saw a policy over the summer that sort of said, hey, stop allowing people to change the sex on their birth certificate. My guess is that there may be some legislation, if needed, to go along with that.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little before the panel, but just sort of the next frontier, sort of a theme we might see this session is, the transgender-related laws so far have been pretty much universally aimed at children, teens, folks, under 18, and it seems like just it's going to shift more towards looking at adults with the return of the bathroom bill. I think is clearly fits in that category. One other one we haven't mentioned is just restricting the use of public funds for transgender care, and then the birth certificate matter. So I think that's I guess they pretty much got everything they wanted. On restricting the sports participation and just transgender care for minors. So I think that is sort of the next frontier is adult transgender care.
I think it's a very winning message for them when they limit it to kids, K through 12. And I think that's part of the reason why in 2017 it was like, well, these are grown people, people can make their choices. But by limiting it to kids, by saying we're going to protect girls' sports, it's a very winning message. Bayless, I want to go to you in terms of talking about the Democrats who I think for the most part are supportive of transgender rights, although there have been issues and there are some more conservative Democrats who are more on the fence about it. I think it is, frankly, a difficult issue to discuss for them because some of them are in more conservative areas of the state. And so what do Democrats do here? I mean, I think to a certain extent it's that transgender folks are more in the public now. I mean, they're just frankly are more viewed. I think it's because the society has become more open to them, but it's also a challenge for people who are in conservative districts who maybe have never come across a transgender person and they just frankly don't understand. So how do Democrats talk about this? Is it a challenge for them as they go forward into this session when there likely is going to be that type of legislation?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Democrats respond to these bills as they're filed, what they say, because what they say is most of what they have power to do when it comes to opposing these bills. I mean, there have been two kind of prominent issues or like situations with Democrats. There was Representative Sean Thierry of the Houston area who voted in favor of a ban on gender affirming care, and that put her out of step with her district. She was primaried, she lost, but she was quickly embraced by Republicans. And she's, spoken about Democrats are so wrong on this issue. They would tell me, behind the scenes, we don't really want to vote for this, but we're going to because we're Democrats. And that's sort of interesting. And then there was the Democratic Party chair, Texas Democratic Party chair, Gilbert Hinojosa, who spoke sort of the day after the election with KUT and said, we have maybe gone too far on certain issues related to trans rights, potentially talking about, sports, that kind of thing. He promptly apologized, but it sort of opened up the conversation in his party about where do we go with this? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think they definitely struggle with that issue, and I think
And I forgot to mention he resigned shortly afterward. Although he cited other things, he did not cite these comments in his resignation.
Right. I think that is certainly a difficult issue. I want to go to another difficult issue, which is the border, and I think this will be my last question before we start taking questions. There's a mic right there. Matt Ewalt is standing right there if people want to start lining up. But I do want to talk about the border because we saw tremendous change in how people in border regions are voting, tremendous gains for President Trump, tremendous gains for Republicans in South Texas and along border counties. And I just want to talk about border issues because I do think that people down there feel it the most. There have been I mean, the numbers of migrants have gone down this year, but for the last couple of years, there have been high numbers, and they are the ones feeling the brunt of it. So what can we expect this session from the Texas legislature, knowing that there will be a Republican administration, Trump administration, that's going to be very tough on the border? Do we expect them to pull back on some of the funding, or do we have to wait and see? What can we expect?
Well, as of now, it sounds like Governor Abbott and other Republican leaders are kind of trending in that direction of cutting back on the funding. I think it's we had a story about this on the Tribune site. Essentially, Abbott has said he expects to need some sort of stopgap funding to until Trump takes office and implements his crackdown policies. But I think just in terms of the billions that Texas has spent on border security over the last 4 years, I mean, if that is how it plays out, where Operation Lone Star kind of winds down, or we get to a point where it's not like $5 billion per biennium, that's $5 billion that can go towards, teacher raises, who knows? And I think we're hoping to talk about a little bit about the budget. There's looks like there's going to be around a $15 to $20 billion surplus. I think 17 billion was the number I saw. So, plus maybe some freed up money that would have gone towards border security. It'll be another kind of just a like herding cats to figure out how that money is going to get spent. I think with just so many competing interests. I mean, we've seen the story before from last session.
Mo money, mo problems. We got questions.
And before we get to questions in our in-person audience, just a reminder for those watching online, you can ask questions via our Q&A portal at texastribune.org/ask. And just a reminder for our audience here, when you're asking questions today, make sure there's a question mark at the end of your question, so we can also, just out of respect for our fellow audience members, so we can get to as many questions as possible.
Thank you. I read this morning, I think it was a tweet on Blue Sky from salon.com, that Texas and Georgia are hiding the numbers of women who have died because of a lack of abortion access. Do you know anything about this?
We have statistics in Texas from the Health and Human Services Commission. The one thing is that the data that we have on those kinds of things is not that current. It requires context. So I think we have up to like 2023, and there was an increase in maternal deaths, but COVID played a large role. It's hard to tell what caused it, but those statistics are on the Health and Human Services Commission. Hiding, I don't know. I think one could look into it more. I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, I think my understanding, just from following that story a little bit yesterday, is that it's the 2 years after or I guess the year and a half since the Dobbs decision, that's the data that is in question that may not get released. And essentially the Texas officials in charge of this have said that they're going to skip over those years. And I think the claim that I saw from the state health officials is that the timing looks kind of politically suspect for obvious reasons. But part of the context you're mentioning is I think this is not that unusual historically. They have, because it's just impossible to keep pace with. I saw some reporting on this story yesterday that basically, one of the state health officials was saying if we just tried to keep up year after year after year on this data, we'd probably be around like stuck in 2016 or so right now. So I think, but yeah, I think it's worth watching that because I think we've just seen some initial reporting so far.
Yeah, and I just want to distinguish. We have I think that story might have been about the Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Review Committee. They review deaths. So we have the data. It's out there. It's on HHSC, at least for 2023. What they talked about skipping was doing a review of individual deaths, where they go on and say, these are the factors that cause these deaths. So while people, I think, there have been lots of criticism about they need to review these, especially in the years after Dobbs, it's not that they're hiding the composite numbers.
Next question.
At least to my knowledge.
Thank you. We have 4 questions here, and I think we have some from online as well. So just keeping to our schedule too, as is appropriate with our panelists. Maybe there's one panelist who's able to answer the question, just also so we can keep it going. But thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Sparkle Williams. We heard a lot about problems with the care of children in the state's care, Child Protective Services. The court decisions the court no longer seems to be getting involved in or being able to intervene in that. Is there any appetite for the legislature to get more involved in getting a Child Protective Services that actually protects children?
Has anyone here done any reporting on that?
Listen, Bayless?
They've had hearings about the foster care system where they've talked about some problems. I think there's also some hesitation to expand state intervention in family issues. I think we're gonna have to see.
It's also a years-long battle, and it costs a lot of money. And lawmakers rarely have a whole lot of appetite for things that cost more money, even though this is obviously a crucial need for kids. I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of appetite for lawmakers to get super involved. I mean, there are people who are particularly interested in this issue and dedicate themselves to it, but it's not a groundswell of people. And so I haven't seen the appetite for much more activity on this. And frankly, I think when it's a lawsuit against the state, lawmakers usually just want the lawsuit to go away. And in other words, the resolution is make the lawsuit go away, which is sort of the strategy that has been implemented, to your point about the court and the judge who's been working on this case being taken off the case. But thank you for the question. Next question.
Hi, James Dave Montgomery. I appreciate the opportunity for your excellent seminar. I've been following the speakers race. I was curious about your point about a possible third member in the speakers race. Who are some of the potential candidates, and what are y'all hearing?
Well,
Davey, working us for info.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's right. I figure any source is going to be good. I'm kind of doing this too.
I guess I don't think we're in a position reporting-wise to say who. I mean, one name to watch, I think we can say, just because he has previously he previously ran for speaker and didn't get the requisite support. But and I don't know if I'm thinking of James Frank. I don't know if he's necessarily involved in this third candidate effort, or more just, it sounds like he's kind of making it known to members that, you know, he would be open to being their anointed candidate.
Yeah, and I feel comfortable saying James Frank, who's a representative from Wichita Falls, I want to say, because Quorum Report has put that reporting out there that he is throwing himself as a candidate. I'll also note, David Joe, that none of the members who had previously filed for speaker candidacy have officially pulled their names out of the hat. So that's something to watch. But even outside of those people, I think that there are more people making. Well, I know that there are more people making calls. But
how long do you think it's going to last Saturday? Is this going to be an
I don't know. I'm hoping it's done by 3 because the LA Galaxy plays in the MLS Cup at that time. So next question.
And UT, I think.
Good morning. My name is Renato de los Santos. I'm here with North Texas LULAC. My questions for the panel are about some bills that have been pre-filed and what the likelihood is that they might be passed. One of them, of course, is about the effort to try to have school districts de-enroll undocumented students. And then also, Texas was the leader nationally in 2001 in enrolling and creating in-state tuition for undocumented students at the higher ed level. There are some bills that are attacking that opportunity. What are the likelihood that those bills might move forward in this legislature?
I was told by a former legislator that just because a bill is pre-filed doesn't always mean that it's like, hey, we got all the votes for it, so we're putting it out there. Sometimes it could just come from somebody who, you know, wants to state a position and get it out there. So maybe amendments could come along a lot quicker the earlier that you get a bill out there. I haven't looked into those particular bills, but that would just be my initial thought, is that a lot of these pre-filed bills are, you know, maybe that person's passion project or something that they thought of, but not the whole Republican.
Yeah, I to tack onto that real quick. I mean, I think part of the answer to that question hinges pretty heavily on the outcome of the speaker's race, where those sorts of bills that, you know, go further than the legislature has traditionally been willing to go. You know, that's in that category of finding that room further to the right we've been talking about.
Yeah, those have gone nowhere usually. So if they move forward, that's a clear indication of where the legislature has gone. I want to go to the next question here.
Hi there, my name's Sadie. And James, your last question kind of touched on this a little bit with the border, but I was just curious with the incoming administration at the federal level, if y'all see any potential for trends in policy or governance or, government structure. Think of the Department of Government Efficiency or, conversations happening around DOE that might find purchase here in Texas.
What do you mean exactly by the related to the border you were saying?
Oh, well, just that it was a federal
I see.
issue that had come up.
So the question is sort of because of the changes up in Washington, changes that we could see here in Texas?
I mean, I've seen at least one lawmaker tweet about, oh, we need that here, like the Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, and Texas Republicans absolutely.
Sunset Commission.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Texas Republicans love to talk about bureaucratic inefficiency. So I think it could happen. I don't know if there's been a concern.
I think our esteemed colleague Renzo Downey, I saw him tweet something yesterday about, I think it was Briscoe Cain started a Doge caucus or something to that effect. So
we're just having fun with it. I think one important thing, I don't know where you went, I think it was Sadie, energy. Energy, I think that could have a lot of changes. Obviously, President Biden had very different thoughts than President Trump has. And I've seen Representative Jared Patterson talking about nuclear energy, changes to how we produce energy, obviously, and obviously we're a huge energy state. So that's one that I would like really, really look at. Obviously, immigration is the other one.
Hi, my name is Lisa Yin. I have a quick non-political question. The day before yesterday, I noticed a lot of streaks in the clear sky. I believe it's made by like some special airplane. They just like the white streak across the sky. Many people say it's more like a chemtrails. So I mean, it's very concerning. So I wonder when any journalist or news organization is paying attention to those kind of things.
I just wanted to quickly say that where I just came from in Tennessee, it doesn't answer your question, but they actually passed a bill to ban chemtrails. And yeah, they banned, if they do exist, they banned chemtrails. And they also banned vaccinated lettuce.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think we're going to go to the next. Oh, I think that's it. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.